The crystal chandeliers hung above like frozen waterfalls, casting their cold light over 300 guests in designer gowns and tailored suits. Amara Monroe stood in the center of the Monroe family ballroom, her emerald green dress catching the light as she faced the crowd of Atlanta's elite. Her mother-in-law's hand gripped her arm so tightly that she could feel bruises forming beneath her skin. "You thought you could hide it from us," Evelyn Monroe said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "You thought we would never find out what kind of woman our son married." Amara's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She tried to find Raymond in the crowd, her husband of 4 years, the man who had promised to love and protect her until death parted them. He stood near the bar, his face blank, his champagne glass still in his hand. He did not move toward her. He did not speak. "I have not done anything wrong," Amara said, her voice steady despite the terror crawling up her spine. "Whatever you think you know, it is not true." Evelyn smiled. It was the smile of a snake before it strikes. She held up a folder, thick with photographs, and pulled one out for the crowd to see. A man Amara did not recognize. A hotel room she had never been to. Her face, clearly edited onto a body that was not hers. "Pictures do not lie," Evelyn announced. "My investigators found these. Our son's wife, the woman we welcomed into our family, sneaking around with another man for months." "Those are fake," Amara said, her voice rising with desperation. "Raymond, please. You know me. You know I would never betray you like this. Look at me." Raymond finally met her eyes. She searched his face for the man who had held her on their wedding night, who had whispered promises against her skin, who had told her she was his entire world. She found nothing. His eyes were empty. "You have embarrassed this family for the last time," he said quietly. The crowd murmured, their voices like buzzing insects. Amara felt hands grab her from behind. Walter Monroe, her father-in-law, and his brother Harold. They held her arms as Evelyn approached. "In our family," Evelyn said, "there is a tradition. When a woman brings shame upon the Monroe name, she must leave as she came. With nothing." Amara understood then what was about to happen. The blood drained from her face. She began to struggle, but the men holding her were too strong. "Please," she begged. "Please do not do this. I am innocent. I swear on everything I have ever loved, I am innocent." Evelyn's hands found the zipper at the back of Amara's dress. The sound of it coming undone was the loudest thing Amara had ever heard. The emerald fabric, the dress she had spent weeks choosing for this anniversary gala, slid from her shoulders. She screamed. Not from pain, but from the absolute horror of being stripped in front of 300 people who watched with fascination instead of outrage. Some of them held up their phones, recording the destruction of her dignity. "Stop this," she cried. "Someone please stop this." No one moved. The women looked away with practiced disinterest. The men watched with expressions that made her skin crawl. Candace Monroe, Raymond's younger sister, stood near the dessert table and did nothing. She even had the nerve to look bored. The dress fell to the floor. Amara stood in her undergarments, her brown skin exposed under the harsh lights, tears streaming down her face. Evelyn was not finished. She reached for the necklace Raymond had given Amara for their first anniversary, the one she had thought was a symbol of his love. "You never deserved any of this," Evelyn said, yanking the necklace so hard the chain broke against Amara's neck. Amara's knees gave out. She crumbled to the cold marble floor, her arms wrapped around herself, trying to cover what she could. Her body shook with sobs so violent she could barely breathe. "Throw her out," Walter commanded. Security guards stepped forward. They were efficient, grabbing Amara under her arms and dragging her toward the side entrance. Her bare feet scraped against the floor. Her voice had gone hoarse from screaming. "Raymond," she called one last time, twisting to look at her husband. "Raymond, please. I love you. Please do not let them do this to me." He turned his back on her and walked toward the bar for another drink. The night air hit Amara's skin like a slap. The security guards released her at the edge of the property, where the manicured lawn met the darkness of the road beyond. She fell onto the grass, the dew soaking into her skin, mixing with her tears. The massive wooden doors of the Monroe mansion slammed shut behind her. She could hear the party resuming inside. The music started again. People were laughing. She was nothing to them. After 4 years of marriage, 4 years of trying to be good enough for them, 4 years of giving up her own identity to become the perfect Monroe wife, they had thrown her away like garbage. Amara crawled to her hands and knees. The gravel of the driveway bit into her palms. She had no phone, no money, no clothes, no one to call. The nearest house was miles away and she had no car, no way to get there. She began to walk. The road was dark, lit only by the distant glow of the mansion she was leaving behind and the occasional passing of headlights that seemed to slow down before speeding away again. Each car that passed made her feel more exposed, more vulnerable, more ashamed. Her feet began to bleed. Small rocks and broken glass on the side of the road cut into her skin, but she kept walking because stopping meant lying down and never getting up again. She thought about her life, about all the choices that had led her here. She had fallen in love with Raymond Monroe when she was 26 years old. He had been charming, attentive, everything she thought she wanted. When he proposed after 8 months of dating, she said yes without hesitation. When his family made it clear they did not approve of her background, she worked harder to prove herself. When they asked her to sign a prenuptial agreement that gave her nothing if the marriage ended, she signed it because she believed they would be together forever. She had been such a fool. The Thompson estate appeared in her mind. Her parents' home, only 40 miles from where she now stumbled along a dark road in nothing but her underwear. Her father, Lawrence Thompson, one of the wealthiest men in the country. The man she had deliberately kept at arm's length because she wanted to prove she could succeed on her own. The man who had warned her about the Monroes. She had not listened. A gas station appeared in the distance, its lights a beacon in the darkness. Amara walked faster, ignoring the pain in her feet, focused only on reaching that light. The night clerk looked up when she pushed through the door, his eyes widening at the sight of her. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need help?" Amara could barely form words. Her teeth were chattering despite the warm Georgia night. "Phone?" she managed. "Please, I need to use a phone." The clerk handed over his cell phone without hesitation. His name tag read Kevin. He was young, maybe 19 or 20, and his face showed genuine concern rather than judgment. Amara's fingers trembled as she dialed the number she knew by heart. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Hello? Daddy?" Amara whispered, and then she broke down completely. The word carried everything she could not say. The shame. The pain. The desperate need for someone to love her enough to come. "Amara? Baby girl, where are you? What happened?" She could hear her father's voice shifting, becoming the voice he used when he commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals. The voice that made powerful men nervous. "They stripped me," she sobbed. "In front of everyone. They threw me out. I have nothing. I am at a gas station somewhere. Please, Daddy. Please come get me. Stay where you are. Do not move. I am coming. Amara, listen to me. Everything is going to be okay. Daddy is coming." The line went dead. Amara handed the phone back to Kevin, who draped his own jacket around her shoulders without being asked. It smelled like cigarettes and cheap cologne, but it was the kindest thing anyone had done for her in hours. "Do you want me to call the police?" Kevin asked. Amara shook her head. "My father is coming." She sat on the floor of the gas station with her back against the chip display, Kevin's jacket wrapped around her like armor, and waited. 45 minutes later, a black town car pulled into the parking lot. Lawrence Thompson stepped out before the vehicle fully stopped, his tall frame cutting through the fluorescent lights. He was 62 years old, but he moved like a much younger man as he crossed the parking lot. His gray beard was neatly trimmed, his clothes impeccable despite the hour. But his eyes, when they found his daughter, held something Amara had rarely seen. Pure burning fury. He knelt beside her on the dirty gas station floor, this man worth $8 billion, and pulled her into his arms. "I have you," he said. "I have you now. No one will ever hurt you like this again." Amara clung to her father and wept. Lawrence looked up at Kevin, who stood awkwardly behind the counter. "What is your name, son?" "Kevin Mitchell, sir." "You helped my daughter?" "Anyone would have, sir." Lawrence nodded slowly. "I will remember that." He pulled out a business card from his wallet and placed it on the counter. "Call this number tomorrow. Ask for Patricia. She will have a job waiting for you." Then Lawrence Thompson lifted his daughter from the floor, carried her to the waiting car, and drove her away from the worst night of her life. In the back seat, wrapped in a cashmere blanket his driver had waiting, Amara finally stopped shaking. Her father held her hand the entire ride, saying nothing, simply being there. It was only when they were 20 minutes from home that he spoke. "Tell me everything," he said. "Leave nothing out. I need to know exactly what happened." And Amara told him. 4 years earlier, Amara Thompson had been a different woman. She sat in her small apartment in Midtown Atlanta, the one she paid for with her salary from the marketing firm where she worked as a junior account manager. The apartment was nothing special, a one-bedroom with a view of a parking garage, but it was hers. She had earned it without her father's money, and that meant everything. Her phone buzzed with a text from her college roommate. There is a party tonight at the Monroe estate. Very exclusive. I got you on the list. Amara almost said no. She had a presentation the next morning and should probably be practicing it instead of socializing with people who would look down on her the moment they learned she was not one of them. But something made her type back a yes, grab her best blue dress from the closet and call a rideshare. The Monroe mansion was everything she had imagined and more. Tall white columns framed the entrance like teeth, and the lawn stretched so far she could not see where it ended. Valets in crisp uniforms took keys from guests in cars that cost more than Amara made in 5 years. She felt out of place immediately. Her blue dress, which had seemed elegant in her apartment mirror, looked cheap compared to the designer gowns floating past her. Her heels, which she had bought on sale at a department store, clicked against the marble floors with an embarrassing loudness. But then she saw him. Raymond Monroe stood by the fountain in the center of the ballroom, and Amara forgot how to breathe. He was tall, with smooth brown skin and a smile that could melt glaciers. When his eyes found hers across the crowded room, something electric passed between them. He walked toward her like she was the only person at the party. "I do not believe we have met," he said, extending his hand. "I am Raymond." "Amara," she replied, placing her hand in his. "And I know who you are. Everyone knows who the Monroes are." "Then you have me at a disadvantage," he said, still holding her hand. "Because I know nothing about you. And I find myself wanting to know everything." They talked for 3 hours that night. He asked about her job, her dreams, her favorite books. He listened when she spoke, really listened in a way that made her feel seen. When the party ended, he asked for her number. When she gave it, he called the next day. Their courtship was straight out of a movie. Raymond sent flowers to her office every Friday. He planned elaborate dates that showed he paid attention to the little things she mentioned. When she said she loved jazz, he surprised her with tickets to a private concert. When she mentioned missing her grandmother's cooking, he hired a chef to recreate the recipes. 3 months in, Amara told him the truth about her family. "My father is Lawrence Thompson," she said over dinner at a quiet restaurant. "Thompson Industries. I do not advertise it because I want people to see me, not his money." Raymond's reaction surprised her. Instead of the calculating gleam she expected, his eyes softened. "That must be hard," he said. "Growing up with everyone assuming things about you, wondering if people like you for yourself or what they can get." "Yes," she whispered. "Exactly that." "I understand," he said. "More than you know." When he proposed 8 months later, kneeling on the beach at sunset with a ring that sparkled like the ocean, Amara believed she had found her person. Someone who understood her, who loved her for who she was, who would stand beside her through anything. She was wrong. The warning signs started small. His mother, Evelyn, who smiled at Amara with her mouth but never with her eyes. His father, Walter, who asked pointed questions about Lawrence Thompson's business dealings. His sister, Candace, who made little comments about Amara's hair, her clothes, her way of speaking. "They will warm up to you," Raymond promised. "They just need time." But time did not help. The wedding was beautiful, held at the Monroe estate because Evelyn insisted. Amara's parents attended but were seated far from the main table. When Lawrence tried to give a toast, Evelyn cut him off, claiming they were running behind schedule. After the wedding, things changed. Raymond grew distant. He worked late, traveled often, came home smelling of perfume that was not Amara's. When she asked about it, he dismissed her concerns. "You are being paranoid," he said. "I love you. Is that not enough?" It should have been enough, but it was not. Amara found receipts for jewelry she had never received. Hotel charges in cities he claimed to be visiting for business. Texts on his phone from someone named D, filled with words no married man should be reading from another woman. She confronted him once. Only once. His face transformed from the man she loved into a stranger who frightened her. "Do not ever go through my things again," he said, his voice cold. "If you cannot trust me, then maybe we should not be together." Amara backed down. She told herself she was imagining things. She buried her suspicions because the alternative, admitting that she had made a mistake, that her father had been right about the Monroes, that her marriage was built on lies, was too painful to face. So she played the perfect wife. She attended family dinners where Evelyn criticized everything from her cooking to her clothes. She smiled at parties while Candace made snide remarks about her background. She pretended not to notice when Raymond's eyes followed other women across the room. She lost herself. Day by day, piece by piece, she became someone she did not recognize. A shadow of the confident woman who had once insisted on making her own way in the world. Her parents noticed. Her mother, Naomi, called weakly with concern in her voice. "You sound tired, baby." Are you happy? Are they treating you well? Everything is fine, Mama, Amara would say. You worry too much. Lawrence was less subtle. The word on the street is that Monroe boy has wandering eyes, he said during one of their rare visits. Say the word and I will end him. Daddy, please. You do not understand their world. I understand men, Lawrence replied. And I understand when my daughter is being mistreated. You do not have to stay with someone who does not treat you right. But Amara stayed. She stayed because she had invested 4 years. Because she had signed a prenup that left her with nothing. Because admitting failure felt worse than living with it. She stayed until the night of the anniversary gala, when Evelyn Monroe decided that Amara had outlived her usefulness. What Amara did not know, what she would not discover until later, was that her downfall had been planned for months. Evelyn had found someone better for Raymond, someone with more money and more connections. Denise Crawford, the daughter of a shipping magnate, who had been sleeping with Raymond for 2 years. Denise wanted Raymond. Raymond wanted Denise's money and family connections. But there was a problem. Amara. A divorce would be messy, expensive, and damaging to the Monroe reputation. But if Amara could be exposed as unfaithful, she could be discarded without consequence. The prenup ensured she would leave with nothing and her reputation would be destroyed. So they created the evidence. Denise's cousin, a photographer, photoshopped images of Amara in compromising positions. They planted the story with strategically placed whispers among Atlanta's elite. And then they chose the perfect moment, the 4th anniversary gala, to execute their plan. Amara never stood a chance. She walked into that ballroom believing she was celebrating her marriage. She walked out with nothing but her underwear and her broken heart. But the Monroes made one miscalculation. They forgot who Amara's father was. They forgot that Lawrence Thompson had built his empire by destroying anyone who crossed him. They forgot that a man who loved his daughter more than life itself would burn the world down to avenge her. They would not forget for long. The Thompson estate appeared through the car windows like a dream. Amara had not been home in almost 2 years, choosing to spend holidays with the Monroes instead because Evelyn insisted on it. Now, as the iron gates swung open and the familiar oak-lined driveway stretched before her, she felt the weight of all the time she had lost. The house glowed against the night sky, every window lit as if her parents had turned on every lamp in anticipation of her arrival. The car had barely stopped before the front door opened and Naomi Thompson rushed out. My baby, she cried, reaching the car just as Lawrence helped Amara step out. Oh, my precious baby. What did they do to you? Amara collapsed into her mother's arms. Naomi was 60 years old but still strong, still the woman who had raised 3 children while supporting her husband through the early years of building his empire. She held Amara like she was a little girl again, rocking her gently, murmuring words of comfort. Let us get her inside, Lawrence said. She needs a hot bath and clean clothes. They moved as a unit into the house. The marble floors that Amara had once slid across in her socks, the grand staircase she had raced her brothers down, the paintings she had studied during long childhood afternoons, everything was exactly as she remembered. But she was not the same person who had left. Naomi took charge. She drew a bath with lavender oil, laid out fresh pajamas, sat with Amara while she soaked in water hot enough to turn her skin pink. She did not ask questions. She simply existed, a warm presence in a cold world. Mama, Amara finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was so stupid. You and Daddy tried to tell me and I would not listen. Hush, Naomi replied. None of this is your fault. You loved a man who did not deserve you. That is not stupidity. That is being human. They showed pictures. In front of everyone. They said I was unfaithful. Amara's voice broke. I never cheated on him, Mama. Not once. Not even in my thoughts. I loved him. I know, baby. I know. After the bath, Naomi dressed Amara's wounded feet and tucked her into the bed in her childhood room. The pink walls had been repainted a soft cream, but the window seat where she used to read still looked out over the rose garden. Sleep, Naomi said, kissing her forehead. Your father and I will handle everything. But Amara could not sleep. She lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night over and over. Every face in that crowd. Every hand that touched her. The sound of her dress hitting the floor. The coldness in Raymond's eyes. Down the hall in Lawrence's study, a very different scene was unfolding. Lawrence Thompson sat behind his mahogany desk, the phone pressed to his ear. He had changed from his casual clothes into a tailored suit because the calls he was about to make required a certain frame of mind. Across from him sat Robert Hayes, his head of security and personal investigator, who had arrived within minutes of being summoned. I want everything, Lawrence said into the phone. Every business deal, every financial transaction, every secret they have tried to hide. The Monroe family has operated in Atlanta for 3 generations. They did not build their empire by being clean. Find the dirt. He hung up and turned to Robert. What do we know? Robert flipped open a leather folder. Raymond Monroe, 35 years old. MBA from Duke, never used it. Works as a vice president at Monroe Holdings, a title his father created for him. No significant business achievements of his own. And the family? Walter Monroe, 68. Founded Monroe Holdings 40 years ago. Commercial real estate mostly. Net worth approximately $400 million. The word on the street is their holdings are leveraged to the point of instability. They have been looking for a major investor for the past 2 years. Lawrence leaned back in his chair. So they married my daughter for her connections. When she did not provide them, they decided to dispose of her. It appears that way, sir. But there is more. Robert pulled out a photograph. Denise Crawford, 29 years old. Daughter of Marcus Crawford, who owns Crawford Shipping. Lawrence took the photograph. A beautiful woman with calculating eyes stared back at him. Who is she to the Monroes? She has been romantically involved with Raymond Monroe for at least 2 years. Our sources indicate she was present at the gala tonight, seated at the family table. Lawrence's jaw tightened. He was cheating on my daughter while his family accused her of infidelity. Yes, sir. The photographs they presented tonight were fabricated. I have already confirmed it with a digital forensics expert. The metadata shows they were created 3 weeks ago using standard photo manipulation software. I want that expert ready to testify if needed. Lawrence stood and walked to the window. The night was quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the storm building inside him. What about Crawford Shipping? Solid company. Net worth approximately $600 million. But they have their own skeletons. Environmental violations they have covered up. Labor practices that would not survive public scrutiny. So the Monroes are trading up. Disposing of my daughter to align with a wealthier family. Lawrence turned back to Robert. What is their timeline? Our sources say Raymond plans to announce his engagement to Denise Crawford within 2 months. They wanted Amara gone and disgraced so there would be no complications. Lawrence was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle. It was the voice his competitors feared most because they knew it meant he had already decided their fate. The Monroe family humiliated my daughter. They stripped her of her clothes and her dignity. They threw her into the street like trash. He picked up a crystal paperweight from his desk and examined it as if seeing it for the first time. I built this empire from nothing. I started with one warehouse and turned it into an international conglomerate. I have ended careers, destroyed companies, and broken men who thought they were untouchable. He set the paperweight down with a soft click. The Monroes have made themselves my enemy. They do not understand what that means yet. But they will. Robert nodded. What are your orders, sir? First, I want every piece of evidence against them documented and verified. The affair, the fabricated photographs, any financial irregularities. Build me a case so airtight that even God himself could not find a hole in it. And then we wait. We watch. We let them believe they have one. And when they feel most secure, when they think they have gotten away with everything, we will take it all away from them. Lawrence's eyes were cold. Not quickly. Slowly. I want them to feel every loss. I want them to watch their world crumble piece by piece and know exactly who is doing it to them. Understood, sir. One more thing. Lawrence sat back down at his desk. My daughter will be involved in every step of this. Not as a victim but as a participant. She needs to reclaim her power. She needs to see that she is not helpless. Robert stood to leave but paused at the door. Sir, in all my years working for you, I have never seen you this angry. Lawrence looked up. They touched my child, Robert. They hurt my baby girl. There is no limit to what I will do to them. In her childhood bedroom, Amara had finally fallen into a fitful sleep. She dreamed of green dresses and cold marble floors, of hands grabbing her and cameras flashing, of Raymond's back as he walked away. But somewhere in the darkness of the dream, a light appeared. Small at first, then growing. A voice that sounded like her father's, telling her she was not alone. Telling her she was loved. Telling her that everything was going to be okay. When she woke up the next morning, sunlight streaming through the windows, she found fresh flowers on her nightstand and a note in her mother's handwriting. Come down when you are ready. Breakfast is waiting. We love you more than you will ever know. Amara held the note to her chest and for the first time since the nightmare began, felt something other than pain. She felt hope. 2 weeks passed. Amara spent most of that time in her childhood home healing. Her mother brought her meals, her father sat with her in the evenings, and slowly, carefully, she began to piece herself back together. The bruises on her arms faded. The cuts on her feet healed. The wounds inside took longer. But she was not idle. Each day Robert Hayes arrived with updates. Each day she learned more about the depth of her betrayal. And each day her grief transformed into something harder, something with edges. "I want to see everything," she told her father one morning over breakfast. "Do not try to protect me from the truth. I need to know what I was living in." Lawrence nodded. "Robert is ready whenever you are." They gathered in the study that afternoon, Amara, Lawrence, Naomi, and Robert. The investigator had set up a presentation on the large screen that dominated one wall of the room. "I apologize in advance," Robert said to Amara. "Some of this will be difficult to hear." "I was stripped in front of 300 people," Amara replied. "I can handle difficult." Robert began. The affair had started 2 years ago, just a few months after Amara and Raymond's wedding. Denise Crawford had met Raymond at a charity event. Their connection was immediate and, according to multiple sources, intensely physical. Hotel records showed they had been meeting regularly ever since. Credit card statements revealed expensive gifts, romantic dinners, trips to Miami and Las Vegas. "He bought her a car," Amara said quietly, looking at a receipt on the screen. "A Mercedes. For her birthday." "Yes," Robert confirmed. "He also took her to Paris last year. During the week he told you he was at a business conference in Chicago." Naomi reached for her daughter's hand. Amara squeezed it but did not look away from the screen. The affair was just the beginning. Robert had uncovered a paper trail that implicated the entire Monroe family in a scheme that went back decades. Shell companies used to hide assets. Tax evasion on a massive scale. Construction contracts obtained through bribery. Environmental violations at their commercial properties that had been covered up through political connections. "Monroe Holdings is not just overextended," Robert explained. "It is fundamentally corrupt. The only reason they have survived this long is because they have been bribing the right people." "And the photographs," Lawrence said. "The ones they used against my daughter." Robert pulled up a new slide. "Created 3 weeks before the gala by a man named Derek Foster. He is Denise Crawford's cousin and a professional photographer. The digital forensics are conclusive. The images are composites, Amara's face placed onto another woman's body." "Can we prove it?" Amara asked. "Absolutely. The original images still exist on Foster's hard drive. He was not careful about covering his tracks. We also have text messages between Foster and Denise discussing the project." Amara closed her eyes. All those months of Raymond making her feel crazy for suspecting him. All those family dinners where Evelyn looked at her with barely disguised contempt. All those times she told herself she was imagining things, that everything was fine, that she was overreacting. "There is more," Robert said. "The plan was set in motion by Evelyn Monroe. She has been orchestrating Raymond's relationship with Denise from the beginning. The goal was always to replace you with someone who could provide the financial backing Monroe Holdings needs to survive." "Evelyn," Amara whispered. "The woman who had smiled at her wedding. Who had called her daughter. Who had ripped her dress off in front of hundreds of people." "We have recordings," Robert continued. "Evelyn discussing the plan with Walter. They knew about the fabricated evidence. They chose the anniversary gala specifically because it would cause maximum humiliation." Lawrence stood and walked to the window. When he spoke, his voice was tight with controlled fury. "Play the recordings." Evelyn's voice filled the room, crisp and familiar. "The timing is perfect. Everyone who matters will be there. When we expose her, she will be completely destroyed. No one will believe a word she says." Walter's voice responded. "And Raymond? Is he prepared?" "He knows what to do. He will play his part. Honestly, I do not think he cares. He stopped loving her years ago if he ever did at all." Amara sat perfectly still. Hearing them discuss her destruction so casually, so confidently, as if she were nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. "That is enough," Naomi said. "Turn it off. She has heard enough." But Amara shook her head. "No. I want to hear all of it." The recording continued. Evelyn and Walter discussed every detail. The photographs. The setup. The stripping, which Evelyn described as a family tradition that did not actually exist. The plan to file for divorce the following week, citing Amara's supposed infidelity as grounds to enforce the prenuptial agreement. "She will leave with nothing," Evelyn said on the recording. And everyone in Atlanta will know what kind of woman she is. Lawrence Thompson's precious daughter, exposed as a cheater. It is almost poetic. The recording ended. Silence filled the study. Amara stood. She walked to the window and stood beside her father, looking out at the manicured grounds of the Thompson estate. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. When I married him, Amara finally said, I thought I was building a life. I gave up everything, my career, my independence, my connection to you and Mama, because I believed in our family. I believed in him. I know, baby, Lawrence said. They planned this for years. Every smile, every kind word was a lie. They used me and then threw me away like I meant nothing. Yes. Amara turned to face her father. Her eyes were dry. I do not want them destroyed because of what they did to me. I want them destroyed because they are bad people who have hurt others and gotten away with it for too long. Lawrence studied his daughter's face. He saw something new there. The girl who had been stripped and humiliated was gone. In her place stood a woman with steel in her spine. What do you want to do? He asked. I want to work, Amara said. At Thompson Industries. I want to earn my place, not as your daughter but as an employee. I want to rebuild my life from the ground up. And the Monroes? A small smile crossed Amara's face. It was not a kind smile. Let them think they have one. Let them enjoy their victory. And when they are not looking, we take everything they have ever cared about. Lawrence placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder. That is my girl. Later that night, after Naomi had gone to bed, Amara sat with her father in the study. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I need to ask you something, Amara said. The prenup I signed. Does it protect me at all? Their lawyers drafted it to be airtight, Lawrence admitted. But they made one mistake. They included an infidelity clause that works both ways. If Raymond was unfaithful, the agreement is void. And we can prove he was. We can prove it beyond any shadow of doubt. Lawrence leaned forward. But I want you to understand something. If we go this route, there is no turning back. The Monroes will not just lose their money. They will lose everything. Their reputation, their standing, their future. Amara stared into the fire. She thought about all the nights she had lain awake wondering what she had done wrong. All the time she had blamed herself for Raymond's distance. All the ways she had diminished herself trying to fit into their world. Good, she said. Let them lose everything. Let them feel what it is like to have nothing. Lawrence nodded slowly. Then he reached for the phone and made a call that would begin the destruction of the Monroe Empire. It is time, he said to whoever answered. Release the first wave. The offices of Thompson Industries occupied the top 15 floors of the tallest building in Atlanta. From her new desk on the 42nd floor, Amara could see the entire city spread out below her, a tapestry of steel and glass and ambition. She had insisted on starting at the bottom. Not in some ceremonial position that existed only because of her last name, but as a junior analyst in the business development division. Her supervisor, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Ellis, had no idea Amara was the owner's daughter. To her, Amara was simply a new hire with a business degree and something to prove. Your first assignment, Patricia said, dropping a thick folder on Amara's desk. Market analysis for the Henderson account. I need it by Friday. You will have it by Thursday, Amara replied. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Confidence. I like that. Just make sure you can back it up. The work was challenging and exactly what Amara needed. She arrived before dawn and stayed late into the evening, immersing herself in spreadsheets and reports. Her mind, which had spent years growing soft in the gilded cage of the Monroe household, began to sharpen again. 3 weeks into her new position, she met Julian Pierce. He was standing at the coffee machine on the 42nd floor, staring at it with the confusion of someone facing an unexpected enemy. The machine was making a grinding noise that suggested something had gone very wrong inside. You have to hit the side twice before pressing the button, Amara said, walking up behind him. It has a temperament. Julian turned. He was tall, with warm brown skin and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He wore a blue button-down shirt that brought out the richness of his complexion. Sounds like most of the printers on this floor, he said, trying her trick. The machine whirred to life and produced a cup of coffee. Thank you. You just saved my morning. Happy to help. I am Amara. Julian. Project management. I have not seen you around before. I just started a few weeks ago. Business development. Patricia's team. She is tough but fair. You will learn a lot. They talked for 10 minutes, just small talk about the building and their work. But there was something about Julian that put Amara at ease. He had no agenda. No angles. He was simply friendly, and in a world where everyone seemed to want something from her, that felt rare. Over the following weeks, they kept running into each other. The coffee machine. The elevator. The small cafe on the ground floor where employees grabbed lunch. Each conversation lasted a little longer than the one before. "What brought you to Thompson Industries?" Julian asked one day over sandwiches. Amara considered her answer carefully. She had not told anyone at work about her connection to Lawrence, and she was not ready to reveal it now. But she did not want to lie to Julian. "I needed a fresh start," she said finally. "I was in a bad situation, and I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own." "I understand that," Julian said. "I spent 5 years in a job that was slowly killing me before I had the courage to leave. Starting over is terrifying, but it is also liberating." "What was the job?" "I was an associate at a law firm. Long hours, toxic culture, partners who took credit for everything. I made good money, but I was miserable." He shrugged. "Now I make less, but I actually enjoy coming to work." "Worth the trade." Amara smiled. "I think that is brave. Brave or stupid, depending on who you ask." Julian's eyes met hers. "But life is too short to spend it being unhappy." That conversation stayed with Amara. Life is too short to spend it being unhappy. Such simple words, but they cut straight to the heart of everything she had lived through. Meanwhile, away from the office, the first stage of Lawrence's plan was unfolding. Monroe Holdings had been preparing to close a major deal with the city government. A contract to develop a new commercial district worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It was supposed to be their lifeline, the project that would save them from their mountain of debt. 2 days before the final signatures, the contract was awarded to someone else. A company called Harbor Development that had suddenly emerged as a competitor with a better proposal and stronger financial backing. Harbor Development was owned, through a series of shell companies, by Lawrence Thompson. Walter Monroe received the news in his corner office. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his lawyers. "We had this deal locked up. Someone outmaneuvered us," his attorney admitted. "They came in at the last minute with terms the city could not refuse. Find out who owns Harbor Development now." But the shell companies were impenetrable. The ownership trail led through Delaware corporations and offshore accounts, designed specifically to be untraceable. Walter would eventually learn who was behind it, but by then it would be too late. The loss of the development contract was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, Monroe Holdings began hemorrhaging in ways that seemed almost random. Investors pulled out without explanation. Banks suddenly demanded accelerated loan payments. Key employees were recruited away by competitors offering double their salaries. "Someone is targeting us," Evelyn said during a family meeting at the Monroe mansion. "This cannot be coincidence." Raymond shrugged. He was distracted, texting under the table, probably with Denise. "Father has enemies. This is probably just normal business." "This is not normal," Walter snapped. "This is coordinated. Someone is dismantling us piece by piece. Then find them and stop them." Walter stared at his son with barely concealed contempt. "Perhaps if you spent less time with your girlfriend and more time actually working, you might contribute something useful to this family." Raymond's face hardened. "Careful, father. You are the one who encouraged me to pursue Denise. Her family's money was supposed to save us, remember? And it still might if you can manage to secure her without any more complications." Evelyn smoothed her dress, her composure perfect as always. "The divorce papers were filed last week. Amara has not responded yet. Our lawyers say that is unusual." "Perhaps she is too ashamed to fight," Raymond said. "Or perhaps she is planning something," Evelyn replied. "I warned you both. Lawrence Thompson is not a man to be underestimated." "Thompson is a businessman," Walter said dismissively. "He understands how the world works. He will bluster and threaten, but ultimately he will accept reality. His daughter is damaged goods now. No one will believe her over us." But even as he spoke, Walter felt a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. Back at Thompson Industries, Amara was building a life. She had delivered her first report early as promised. Patricia had been impressed enough to assign her to larger projects. Her colleagues, who initially kept their distance from the quiet new employee, began to warm up to her. She joined them for happy hour on Fridays. She organized a birthday celebration for an administrative assistant. She became, slowly but surely, part of the team. And through it all, there was Julian. He began waiting for her at the coffee machine in the mornings. They took their lunch breaks together more often than not. He told her about his family, his younger sister who was in medical school, his parents who had been married for 40 years and still held hands in public. "That is beautiful," Amara said. "I always wanted something like that." "You do not have it?" She shook her head. "I was married. It did not work out." Julian did not push for details. He simply nodded and said, "I am sorry. That must have been hard." "It was. But I am learning that sometimes the worst things that happen to us can lead to the best things." She met his eyes. "If I had not gone through what I went through, I would not be here. I would not have found this work or this life or—" She stopped, suddenly shy. "Or," Julian prompted gently. "Or people like you," Amara finished quietly. "People who are kind without wanting anything in return." Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the table and touched her hand just briefly, just enough to let her know he understood. "For what it is worth," he said, "I think whoever let you go was an idiot." Amara laughed, the first real laugh she had experienced in months. It felt strange and wonderful, like stretching a muscle she had forgotten she had. That night she called her mother. "Mama, I met someone," she said. "Not like that, not yet. But he is different. He makes me feel like myself again." Naomi's voice was warm with hope. "Tell me everything." And Amara did. The Monroe mansion, once a symbol of old money elegance, had begun to show cracks. Walter sat in his study surrounded by papers, each one bearing bad news. The latest was a notice from their primary bank, calling in a loan that should not have been due for another 3 years. The reason given was vague: internal policy changes. But Walter knew the truth. Someone had gotten to them. "How much do we need?" Evelyn asked, standing by the fireplace in a maroon dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. 20 million. By the end of the month. "We do not have it." "I am aware." Evelyn's composure cracked, just slightly. "What about Denise's family? Raymond needs to accelerate the engagement." "I have already spoken to Marcus Crawford. He is willing to help, but only after the wedding. He wants to ensure his daughter is properly secured first. Then tell Raymond to propose. Tonight." "I told him. He said he needs time." "Time?" Evelyn's voice rose. "We do not have time. This family is drowning and our son is too busy playing house with his mistress to notice." Walter said nothing. There was nothing to say. Across town, in a modern apartment overlooking Centennial Park, Raymond Monroe was having his own crisis. "You need to choose," Denise said. She was beautiful, there was no denying it. Long legs, perfect makeup, designer clothes. But her eyes had a hardness that Raymond had once found attractive and now found exhausting. "I am tired of waiting. Your divorce should have been final by now. There have been complications." "What complications?" "She was caught cheating. She has no legal standing." Raymond poured himself a whiskey. "Her lawyers sent a counter-filing. They are claiming the photographs were fabricated and citing evidence of my own infidelity." Denise's face went pale. "What evidence?" "They have everything. Hotel records. Credit card statements. Text messages." He drained his glass. "They even have recordings of my mother planning the whole thing." "That is impossible. How would they have access to?" "Lawrence Thompson." Raymond spat the name like a curse. "He has been investigating us for weeks. His people are everywhere. My father's banker is on his payroll. Our head of security was feeding him information. We have been compromised from the inside." Denise sank onto the couch. "What does this mean?" "It means the prenuptial agreement is void. If she can prove I was unfaithful, which she can, Amara is entitled to half of everything." Raymond laughed bitterly. "Not that there is much left to split. Your family is worth hundreds of millions." "Was worth? Our holdings are collapsing. Contracts are disappearing. Investors are fleeing. Someone is systematically destroying us and we cannot even figure out how." He poured another drink. "I underestimated her father. We all did." Denise stood and gathered her purse. "I need to speak with my father." "About what?" "About whether an alliance with your family is still in my best interest." She headed for the door, then paused. "You should have been smarter, Raymond. You should have kept her happy and kept me hidden. Now you are going to lose everything, including me." The door slammed behind her. Raymond stood alone in his apartment, the amber liquid trembling in his glass. For the first time since this all began, he felt fear. The next blow came 3 days later. A prominent business magazine published an investigative piece on Monroe Holdings. The article detailed decades of questionable practices: bribery, tax evasion, environmental violations, mistreatment of workers. Anonymous sources provided documentation. Former employees spoke on the record. The story spread like wildfire. Within hours, it was the talk of Atlanta's business community. Monroe Holdings' stock price, already depressed, plummeted further. Partners rushed to distance themselves. Social invitations were quietly withdrawn. But the worst was yet to come. Evelyn Monroe received a phone call from her oldest friend, a society matron named Patricia Wellington who had been by her side through decades of galas and fundraisers. "I am calling to let you know that you have been removed from the planning committee for the spring charity ball," Patricia said, her voice cool. The board felt it was best, given the current circumstances. Evelyn's hand tightened on the phone. "What circumstances?" "Evelyn, please. Everyone knows what you did to that girl. The photographs were fake. Your son was the one having an affair. You stripped an innocent woman in front of 300 people. She brought shame on our family. She was framed. By you." Patricia's voice held no sympathy. "I stood in that ballroom and watched. I did nothing because I believed what you told us. Now I know the truth and I am ashamed of myself. Patricia, we have been friends for 30 years. Yes. Which is why I am calling instead of letting you find out through the newspapers. But our friendship is over. Do not contact me again." The line went dead. Evelyn sat motionless for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, she picked up a crystal vase from the table beside her and hurled it against the wall. The shattering glass was oddly satisfying. At Thompson Industries, Amara heard about the article from Patricia Ellis, who mentioned it casually during a team meeting. "Monroe Holdings is in free fall," Patricia said. "If any of you have investments with them, I would suggest divesting immediately." Amara kept her face neutral, but inside, something complicated was happening. She had wanted this. She had asked for this. But actually watching it unfold was different from imagining it. She called her father that evening. "I saw the article." "Yes. It has been widely circulated. How much of it came from us?" "All of it. We simply provided the journalists with accurate information and let them do their job." Lawrence paused. "Are you having second thoughts?" Amara considered the question carefully. "No. They deserve what is coming. I thought it would feel different. Better, maybe." "Revenge is not about feeling good," Lawrence said. "It is about justice. About making sure that bad people face consequences for their actions. The satisfaction comes later when you have rebuilt your life and they are still picking up the pieces of theirs. When does it end? When they have nothing left. When the world knows what they did. When your name is cleared and theirs is forever stained." His voice softened. "But if you want to stop, we stop. This is your decision, not mine." Amara thought about the ballroom. The cold marble floor. Raymond's back as he walked away. "No," she said. "We do not stop. Not until it is finished." The next day, Raymond Monroe appeared at Thompson Industries. He was waiting in the lobby when Amara came down for lunch, looking nothing like the confident man she had married. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. He had clearly not slept in days. "Amara," he said, stepping toward her. "Please. We need to talk." She stopped, her expression unreadable. "We have nothing to talk about. I made mistakes. I know that. But we can work this out. Sign the divorce papers, take a reasonable settlement, and we can both move on." "A reasonable settlement?" Amara's voice was ice. "You mean the prenup that was supposed to leave me with nothing? The same prenup that is now void because of your affair." That was a misunderstanding. The photographs were fake. I know. The whole world knows now." Raymond's desperation showed. "My family is being destroyed. Our business, our reputation, everything. Was this you? Was this your father?" Amara stepped closer, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. "You stood there and watched them strip me. You watched and did nothing. You let your mother throw me into the street like garbage." Her voice was quiet but carried more weight than any shout. "You think you are being destroyed now? This is nothing. This is just the beginning. Amara, please. I loved you." "No, you did not. You never loved me. I was useful to you, a trophy, a connection to my father's money. When I stopped being useful, you threw me away." She stepped back. "The divorce papers will go through my lawyers. You will sign whatever they put in front of you. And then you will never speak to me again." "And if I refuse?" Amara smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Then we will release everything else we have. The recordings of your mother planning my humiliation. The photographs of you and Denise. The documentation of every illegal thing your family has ever done." She tilted her head. "Do you really want to test me, Raymond?" He had no answer. Amara walked past him toward the door where Julian was waiting. He had seen everything, had been ready to intervene if needed. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Amara looked back at Raymond one last time. Her former husband stood in the lobby of her father's building, surrounded by success and power that would never be his. A broken man in a wrinkled suit, with nothing left but his pride, and even that was slipping away. "Yes," she said, turning back to Julian. "I think I finally am." Spring arrived in Atlanta with blooming azaleas and warm breezes that carried the promise of new beginnings. Amara had been working at Thompson Industries for 4 months now, and the woman who had once been stripped of everything was becoming someone new. Her work had earned her a promotion. Junior analyst to senior analyst with a team of her own. Patricia Ellis had personally recommended her, praising her strategic thinking and tireless work ethic. "I do not know where you came from," Patricia told her, "but wherever it is, they trained you well." Amara accepted the compliment without revealing the irony. She had come from luxury and privilege, had deliberately walked away from it to prove something to herself. And she had. Her relationship with Julian had deepened too. They were not officially dating, not yet, but they were something. Friends who lingered too long over coffee. Colleagues who found excuses to work on the same projects. Two people circling each other, building trust before taking the leap. It was Julian who finally made the first move. They were on the roof of the Thompson building, a private garden that employees rarely used. The city spread out below them, glittering in the evening light. Amara was telling him about her childhood, about growing up as Lawrence Thompson's daughter and the weight of expectations that came with it. "I always felt like people saw the name before they saw me," she said. "I wanted to be just Amara. Not Amara Thompson. Not someone's daughter or someone's wife. Just me." "And who is just Amara?" Julian asked. She thought about it. Someone who is stronger than she knew. Someone who can survive being broken and put herself back together. Someone who is learning to trust again. Julian reached for her hand. This time, instead of a brief touch, he held it. "I need to tell you something." Amara's heart skipped. "Okay. I know who you are. I have known for a while." She went still. "What do you mean?" "Your father owns this company. Your face was all over the news a few months ago, the story about the Monroe family and what they did to you." Julian's eyes were steady. "I knew before our first conversation at the coffee machine." Amara pulled her hand back. "Why did you not say anything?" "Because you did not want people to know. You were working so hard to be seen as yourself, not as your family. I wanted to respect that. So every conversation, every lunch, every moment we have shared, you knew the whole time?" "Yes." She stood, moving to the edge of the roof, looking out at the city. Betrayal was too strong a word, but something cold settled in her chest. Another person who had known things she did not. Another person who had kept secrets. Julian joined her at the railing. "I understand if you are upset. But I want you to know why I did it." "Then tell me." "Because you seemed so determined to be judged on your own merits. And I wanted to give you that." He turned to face her. "When I recommend you for projects, it is because you are good at your job, not because of who your father is. When I laugh at your jokes, it is because you are funny. He paused. "When I started falling for you, it was because of who you are. Not what you have." Amara stared at him. "You are falling for me?" "I think I have been since the day you taught me how to use that stupid coffee machine." A moment passed. Then another. Then Amara did something she had not done in a very long time. She took a risk. She kissed him. It was not a perfect kiss. She was out of practice and nervous, and her heart was racing so fast she thought it might escape her chest. But when Julian's arms came around her and he kissed her back, something inside her that had been locked away for years finally opened. "I am scared," she whispered against his lips. "The last time I trusted someone like this, he destroyed me." "I am not him," Julian said. "And I will spend as long as it takes proving that to you. It might take a while. I have time." They stood on the rooftop as the sun set over Atlanta, two people at the beginning of something neither had expected to find. The next day, Amara told her parents about Julian. Naomi was thrilled. "Invite him to dinner. I want to meet the man who has put that smile on your face." Lawrence was more measured. "What do we know about him?" "Daddy, please do not investigate my boyfriend. He works for me. I already have a file." Amara sighed. "Of course you do." "He is clean," Lawrence admitted. "Good family. Hard worker. No scandals or skeletons. His only notable quality is that he turned down 2 offers from larger companies to stay at Thompson Industries because, and I quote, "the culture here actually respects its employees." "So you approve?" "I will approve after I meet him. But so far." Lawrence allowed himself a small smile. He seems like an upgrade from the last one. Julian came to dinner that weekend. He wore a green sweater that Amara had once mentioned was her favorite color on him. He brought flowers for Naomi and a bottle of scotch for Lawrence. He was polite and charming and answered Lawrence's pointed questions without flinching. "What are your intentions toward my daughter?" Lawrence asked over dessert. "Daddy?" "It is a fair question." Julian set down his fork. "Mr. Thompson, your daughter is the most remarkable person I have ever met. She is brilliant and kind and strong in ways most people cannot even imagine. My intention is to spend as much time as she will allow me proving that she deserves to be treated with love and respect. Beyond that, I will follow her lead." Lawrence studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Good answer." After dinner, Amara walked Julian to his car. "I'm sorry about my father. He can be intense. He loves you. I would be worried if he was not intense." Julian took her hands. "Thank you for letting me into your life. I know it was not easy. No. But it was worth it." He kissed her goodnight, a soft kiss full of promise. Amara watched him drive away, then turned back toward the house where her parents waited. For the first time since the night of the gala, she felt like the future might hold something other than pain. But the Monroes were not finished yet. Raymond's desperation had reached new heights. With Denise pulling away and his family's fortune crumbling, he had convinced himself that reconciling with Amara was his only option. If he could win her back, access to her father's resources might follow. He showed up at her apartment building, waiting in the lobby with flowers and promises. "I have changed," he told her when she came down. "These past months have made me realize what I lost. We can start over. We can try again." Amara looked at the flowers. Pink roses, her favorite. She remembered how touched she had been when he first learned that about her, how she had thought it meant he truly knew her. Now she knew better. "Raymond," she said calmly, "I am only going to say this once. I do not love you anymore. I'm not sure I ever did. I loved an idea of you, a version you created to manipulate me. The real you watched me be humiliated and did nothing. The real you was sleeping with another woman while I lay awake at night wondering what I had done wrong. I can explain. I do not want explanations. I want you to leave me alone." She held his gaze. "If you contact me again, I will file for a restraining order. If you approach me at work or anywhere else, I will have you arrested. Do you understand? You cannot do that. I can do whatever I want. I am Lawrence Thompson's daughter, remember? That used to embarrass me. Now I wear it like armor." She stepped closer, and something in her eyes made him step back. "Go home, Raymond. Go back to Denise if she will have you. Build whatever life you can from the ashes of the one you destroyed. But do it far away from me." She turned and walked back into her building. She did not look back. When she reached her apartment, her hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the rush of finally, truly setting herself free. She picked up the phone and called Julian. "Can you come over?" she asked. "I just need to see you." He was there in 20 minutes. They sat on her couch and she told him everything. The flowers, the confrontation, the years of doubt and self-blame that had finally been released. Julian listened without interrupting. "You are amazing," he said when she finished. "You know that, right?" "I am beginning to." He held her then and she let herself be held. Not because she was weak, but because she was finally strong enough to accept comfort when she needed it. Outside the night was quiet. Inside, Amara Thompson was becoming whole again. The collapse of the Monroe Empire happened faster than anyone expected. It began with the banks. Lawrence had quietly acquired significant influence over Monroe Holdings' primary lenders, and when he gave the word, the financial institutions demanded immediate repayment of all outstanding debts. The total was staggering, nearly $200 million that the Monroes simply did not have. Walter Monroe sat in his office surrounded by the wreckage of everything he had built. Legal notices covered his desk. His phone rang constantly with calls he could not answer. The portrait of his grandfather, the man who had founded Monroe Holdings 3 generations ago, seemed to stare down at him in judgment. "We could file for bankruptcy," his lawyer suggested. "It would at least buy us time." "Bankruptcy means losing everything," Walter said. "The houses, the cars, the art collection. Everything. You are losing everything anyway. At least this way you maintain some control over the process." But there was no control to be had. Lawrence Thompson had been thorough. Every escape route was blocked. Every ally had been turned. Every resource had been stripped away. The Monroe mansion was the first to go. Seized by creditors, its contents auctioned off to pay a fraction of the family's debts. Evelyn stood on the front lawn watching strangers carry out furniture that had been in her family for a century. "This is not over," she told anyone who would listen. "We will rebuild. The Monroes always rebuild." But even she did not believe it. Raymond fared no better. His apartment, his car, his club memberships, all liquidated. He moved into a small studio in a neighborhood he would have refused to drive through a year ago. His designer suits hung in a closet barely big enough to hold them. Denise Crawford was gone. Her father, Marcus, had severed all ties with the Monroes the moment their financial troubles became public. A man worth $600 million did not associate with failures. Raymond's calls went unanswered. His texts were ignored. She left him a voicemail on the day she returned the engagement ring he had given her. "You promised me a partnership with a powerful family. Instead you gave me a scandal. Do not contact me again." But there was something else. Something Raymond did not learn until 3 weeks after Denise disappeared. She was pregnant. The news came from a mutual acquaintance who heard it from a friend. Denise was expecting Raymond's child, but she had no intention of letting him be part of the baby's life. She had already retained lawyers to ensure he would have no parental rights. Raymond sat in his tiny apartment and stared at the wall. He had lost everything. His money, his family, his mistress, even the child he had not known existed. All because he had made the mistake of crossing Lawrence Thompson's daughter. The final blow came in the form of criminal charges. Robert Hayes had not just been investigating the Monroes' business practices. He had been gathering evidence for federal prosecutors. Tax evasion, wire fraud, bribery of public officials. The list of charges was extensive. Walter Monroe was arrested at his daughter Candace's house, where he had been staying since losing the mansion. The cameras captured him in handcuffs, his hair unkempt, his eyes hollow. He looked nothing like the powerful patriarch who had once ruled Atlanta's business community. Evelyn avoided arrest by cooperating with investigators. In exchange for her testimony against her husband, she received immunity. But the cost was everything else. Her friends abandoned her. Her social clubs expelled her. She became a pariah in the world she had spent her entire life building. The news coverage was relentless. Every detail of the Monroe family's crimes was dissected on cable news and in newspaper columns. But what captured the public's attention most was the story of Amara Thompson. The woman who had been publicly humiliated, stripped of her clothes and dignity, only to rise from the ashes while her tormentors fell. Opinion pieces praised her resilience. Social media rallied behind her. She became a symbol of something larger than herself, the possibility of justice in an unjust world. Amara watched the coverage from her parents' house, where she had gathered with Lawrence, Naomi, and Julian. It was strange to see her pain transformed into public narrative, to have strangers commenting on experiences they had not lived. "How do you feel?" Naomi asked. "I do not know," Amara admitted. "Relieved, I think. But also sad. For such a long time I hated them. I wanted them to suffer. Now that they are, I just feel empty." "That is because you are not a cruel person," Lawrence said. "You did not want revenge for its own sake. You wanted justice. You wanted consequences. Is there a difference?" "Yes." Lawrence leaned forward. "Revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making the world a little more fair. One is selfish. The other is necessary." Julian squeezed Amara's hand. "What do you want to do now?" She thought about it. The Monroes were finished. Her name was cleared. The world knew the truth. But somehow it did not feel complete. "I want to tell my story," she said finally. "Not through news articles or social media. In my own words. I want other women who have been through something similar to know that they are not alone. That they can survive and rebuild." Naomi smiled. "That sounds like the daughter I raised." The interview was arranged for the following week. A respected journalist, one who had covered stories of abuse and survival with sensitivity and depth, agreed to conduct it. Amara prepared carefully, working through her memories with a therapist, deciding what to share and what to keep private. The night before the interview, Julian took her to dinner at the restaurant where they had their first real date. It was quiet, intimate, lit by candles that reflected off the crystal glasses. "I am nervous," Amara admitted. "About the interview?" "About everything. About speaking publicly. About what comes next." She paused. "About us." Julian set down his fork. "What about us makes you nervous?" "I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For you to disappoint me. For this to fall apart like everything else." She met his eyes. "I know that is not fair to you. But it is the truth. I appreciate you telling me." Julian reached across the table and took her hand. I cannot promise that nothing will ever go wrong. Life is messy. People make mistakes. But I can promise that I will always be honest with you. I will always fight for us. And I will never ever make you feel like you are not enough. Amara felt tears prick her eyes. Why? Why do you care so much? Because you deserve it. Because you are extraordinary. And because somewhere along the way I fell completely in love with you. It was the first time either of them had said the word. It hung in the air between them, fragile and precious. I love you too, Amara whispered. I was afraid to say it. But I do. They sat there in the candlelight, two people who had found each other against all odds, and let themselves believe in the possibility of happiness. The Thompson Foundation's annual charity gala was the most anticipated event of the Atlanta social calendar. Held in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton, it drew the city's most influential people. Politicians, business leaders, celebrities, philanthropists. The guest list read like a who's who of American wealth and power. This year, Amara Thompson would be the guest of honor. She chose her dress carefully. A stunning red gown that flowed around her like fire, designed by a young designer she had discovered during her time at Thompson Industries. Her hair was swept up, her makeup elegant, her grandmother's pearl earrings the only jewelry she needed. Julian waited for her at the bottom of the stairs, resplendent in a charcoal gray suit. His face when he saw her was everything she needed to know about how she looked. You are breathtaking, he said simply. You clean up pretty well yourself. They drove to the hotel in Lawrence's limousine, Amara's parents seated across from them. Naomi wore royal blue. Lawrence was distinguished in his classic black tuxedo. They looked like what they were, a family united by love and loyalty. Are you ready? Lawrence asked as they pulled up to the red carpet. Yes, Amara said. And for the first time she meant it. The cameras began flashing the moment she stepped out of the car. She had been photographed at events before as Raymond Monroe's wife, a background figure in someone else's narrative. Tonight she was the story. She walked the carpet with her head high, Julian beside her, answering questions from reporters with grace and composure. Yes, she was proud of her father's philanthropic work. Yes, she was grateful for the public's support during her difficult time. No, she would not be commenting on the criminal proceedings against Walter Monroe. The ballroom was magnificent. Thousands of crystal lights created a galaxy overhead. Tables draped in white linen surrounded a dance floor that gleamed like ice. The Thompson Foundation's logo, projected on screens throughout the room, reminded everyone why they had gathered. But Amara knew something the other guests did not. Tonight was not just about charity. Lawrence approached the podium after dinner, his presence commanding instant attention. Thank you all for coming, he said. The Thompson Foundation has spent 30 years working to improve educational opportunities for underserved communities. Tonight, I am proud to announce a new initiative, the Amara Thompson Scholarship Fund, which will provide full college scholarships to survivors of domestic abuse and family violence. Applause filled the room. Amara felt tears threatening and blinked them back. But before we discuss the future, Lawrence continued, I want to talk about the past. Many of you were present a few months ago at an event in this very city. An event where an innocent woman was publicly humiliated. Her clothes torn from her body. Her reputation destroyed. Her dignity stripped away. The room went silent. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward with interest. That woman was my daughter. And tonight, I want to make sure everyone knows the truth. The screens that had displayed the foundation logo flickered. New images appeared. Photographs of Raymond Monroe with Denise Crawford. Hotel receipts. Text messages. The digital forensics report proving the images used against Amara were fabricated. Then came the audio. Evelyn Monroe's voice filled the ballroom, clear and unmistakable. The timing is perfect. Everyone who matters will be there. When we expose her, she will be completely destroyed. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People who had been at the original gala, who had watched Amara's humiliation without intervening, looked at each other with horror. More evidence followed. Walter Monroe's criminal activities. The bribery. The tax evasion. The years of corruption that had built the Monroe fortune. Lawrence spoke over the images. The Monroe family has been part of this community for generations. They have been trusted, respected, even admired. But they are frauds. They are criminals. And they are cowards who attacked a defenseless woman because she was convenient to destroy. He paused, letting his words sink in. My daughter did nothing wrong. She loved a man who did not deserve her. She was used and discarded by a family that cares for nothing but money and power. And yet she survived. She rebuilt. She is here tonight not as a victim but as a survivor. Lawrence extended his hand. Amara, please join me. She walked to the podium, her red dress flowing behind her. The crowd parted for her, some reaching out to touch her arm, to offer silent support. When she reached her father's side, he stepped back, giving her the stage. Amara looked out at the sea of faces. Some she recognized, some she did not. All of them were waiting to hear what she would say. I spent 4 years trying to be good enough for the Monroe family, she began, her voice steady. I gave up my career, my independence, my sense of self. I believed that if I just tried harder, loved better, was more patient, they would accept me. She paused. But the truth is, nothing I did would ever have been enough. Because I was never a person to them. I was a resource to be exploited and a problem to be eliminated. Her eyes found Raymond in the crowd. He stood near the back, alone, wearing a suit that no longer fit properly. He had not been invited, but he had somehow gotten in. Perhaps hoping for a chance to plead his case. Perhaps simply unable to stay away. Raymond, she said, and the room turned to look at him. You were my husband. You promised to love and protect me. And when your family was destroying me, you walked away to get another drink. She let that image settle over the crowd. I am not here for revenge. I am not here to gloat over your family's downfall. I am here because I want every woman who has been made to feel worthless, who has been blamed for her own abuse, who has been told she is not enough, to know that she is enough. She has always been enough. And the people who made her feel otherwise are the ones who should be ashamed. Amara turned back to the crowd. The Amara Thompson Scholarship Fund will help survivors rebuild their lives, just as I am rebuilding mine. Because everyone deserves a second chance. Even those of us who have been stripped of everything. She stepped back from the podium. The silence lasted 1 heartbeat. 2, 3. Then the applause began. It built like a wave, sweeping through the ballroom, until the entire room was on their feet. Julian clapped with tears in his eyes. Naomi pressed her hand to her heart. Lawrence simply smiled, the proud smile of a father whose daughter had exceeded every expectation. Raymond Monroe turned and walked out of the ballroom. No one tried to stop him. No one even noticed. He was already forgotten. After the speeches, after the donations, after the photographs and handshakes, Amara found a quiet moment on the balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool and clear. Julian joined her. How do you feel? Free, she said. I feel free. He wrapped his arm around her, and they stood together watching the lights of Atlanta sparkle in the darkness. What happens now? He asked. Amara smiled. Now we live. We build something beautiful. We prove that they did not break us. Us, Julian repeated. I like the sound of that. Get used to it, Amara said. Because I plan to keep you around for a very long time. She kissed him then, on the balcony of the Ritz-Carlton, with the city at her feet and the future stretching out before her. It was not a fairy tale ending. Real life rarely is. But it was a beginning. And that was enough. 1 year later. The small chapel sat nestled in the Georgia hills, surrounded by wildflowers and ancient oak trees. It was not the grand venue the Thompson name could have commanded. It was better than that. It was intimate, personal, filled with the people who truly mattered. Amara stood in the bridal suite, looking at herself in the mirror. Her dress was elegant simplicity itself. White silk that flowed to the floor, delicate lace at the neckline, a small train that whispered behind her when she walked. She wore her grandmother's pearls and a single fresh magnolia in her hair. Her mother appeared behind her in the mirror. You look beautiful, baby. I feel beautiful. I cannot remember the last time I felt like this. Naomi adjusted the magnolia slightly. I was nervous on my wedding day too. I am not nervous, Amara said, surprising herself with the truth. I am excited. Grateful. Ready. He is a good man. He is the best man. A knock at the door. Lawrence entered, distinguished in his morning suit, his eyes immediately filling when he saw his daughter. You look just like your mother did all those years ago. Do not make me cry before the ceremony. I promise nothing. He offered his arm. Are you ready? I have been ready for a long time. They walked through the chapel, past the small gathering of friends and family who had come to witness this new beginning. Julian's sister, Nicole, sitting with their parents, who had welcomed Amara into their family without reservation. Patricia Ellis, her former supervisor, who had become a friend. Robert Hayes, whose investigation had given her back her truth. No one from the Monroe family was present. No one would have invited them if they had been welcome, which they were not. The doors to the chapel opened, and Amara saw Julian waiting at the altar. He was crying. Not trying to hide it, not ashamed of it, simply overwhelmed by the sight of her. He wore a navy blue suit that brought out the depth of his eyes, and when he smiled at her, she felt every doubt she had ever carried about love simply dissolve. Lawrence walked her down the aisle, each step bringing her closer to the life she had chosen. When they reached the altar, he placed her hand in Julian's. "Take care of her," Lawrence said quietly, "or I will end you." "Daddy?" "I know you will," Julian replied, utterly unintimidated. "I would expect nothing less." The ceremony was simple and sincere. They had written their own vows. "Amara," Julian said, holding both her hands in his, "I fell in love with you at a coffee machine. You were patient with a complicated situation and kind to a stranger who could not figure out which button to push. That is who you are. Patient, kind, strong in ways that take my breath away." He paused. "You could have let your past break you. Instead, you turned it into something powerful. I promise to support you in everything you do. To celebrate your victories and hold you through your struggles. To be your partner in every way that matters." Amara's tears were flowing freely now, but she did not care. "Julian," she said, "for a long time I believed that love meant losing yourself. That it meant giving up pieces of who you are until there was nothing left. You taught me that real love is the opposite. You loved me back to wholeness. You saw me at my most broken and chose to stay." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to be honest with you even when it is hard. To trust you even when I am scared. To build a life with you that we can both be proud of." The rings were exchanged. The vows were sealed. And when the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Julian kissed her with the tenderness of a man who understood exactly how precious she was. The reception was held in a garden pavilion under strings of lights that twinkled like stars. There was food and wine and music. There were toasts that made everyone laugh and cry. There was dancing until the moon was high. But the moment Amara would remember most came later, when she and Julian were alone on the edge of the party, watching their guests celebrate. "Mrs. Pierce," Julian said, testing out the name. "Mr. Pierce," she replied. "We did it. We did." He pulled her close. "Any regrets?" "Not a single one." They stood there, wrapped in each other, as the music played and the stars wheeled overhead. Two people who had found each other against all odds and chosen to believe in the possibility of happiness. The Monroes, meanwhile, were living very different lives. Walter Monroe had been convicted on multiple counts of fraud and corruption. He was serving a 12-year sentence in a federal facility, his remaining years measured in cinderblock walls and scheduled meals. Evelyn Monroe lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of Atlanta, surviving on a modest pension and the charity of distant relatives who still acknowledged her existence. The society friends who had once fought for her attention now crossed the street to avoid her. Raymond Monroe worked as a used car salesman at a dealership owned by a man who had once been his father's driver. He lived alone. Denise had given birth to a daughter she refused to let him see. His attempts to rebuild had failed repeatedly, his name too tarnished for anyone to take a chance on him. Candace Monroe, who had stood silently in that ballroom watching her brother's wife be destroyed, had married into a family that moved her to Seattle. She never returned to Atlanta. The Monroe name, once synonymous with power and prestige, had become a cautionary tale. A reminder of what happens when cruelty catches up with those who practice it. 3 weeks after the wedding, Amara received a letter. It arrived at her new home, the house she and Julian had purchased together. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar. "Raymond." She stood in the kitchen, holding the letter, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Julian came in from the garden. "What is that?" "A letter. From Raymond." "Are you going to read it?" Amara considered the question. She thought about all the time she had agonized over Raymond's words, parsed his silences for meaning, searched for explanations that never came. She thought about the woman she had been and the woman she had become. "No," she said. She walked to the trash bin and dropped the letter inside, unopened. "Are you sure?" Julian asked. "I am sure." She smiled at him, the man who had taught her what real love looked like. "Whatever he has to say, it does not matter anymore. That chapter of my life is closed." Julian crossed the kitchen and wrapped his arms around her. "I am proud of you. I am proud of myself." They stood in their kitchen, in their home, surrounded by the life they were building together. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Amara thought about everything she had survived. The betrayal. The humiliation. The long dark nights when she had wondered if she would ever feel whole again. And then she thought about where she was now. Well, successful. Free. You know what I realized? She said. What? They did not break me. They thought they could strip away everything I had and leave me with nothing. But I am still here. I am stronger than I have ever been. And I have everything that matters. Julian kissed the top of her head. You always did. You just needed to find your way back to it. I am glad I did. She looked up at him. I am glad I found you. Me too. He grinned. Even though you only liked me for my coffee machine skills. Amara laughed, the sound bright and free. Come on, Julian said. Let us go watch the sunset. They walked out to their garden, hand in hand, leaving the closed letter behind. The sky was vast and beautiful, full of possibility. And Amara Thompson Pierce, the woman who had once been stripped of everything, faced the future without fear. She had survived the worst. Now it was time to live the best.